Good evening, as the newest addition to the Premier League management team would say. How the devil are we all? Welcome along from me and Mini-Me. I'm, as I say, good evening from me, and it's good evening from him. He's the one that talks more sense. It's brand new. Well, why not? Why not? Football fans, the rivals. Yes, yeah, you've got to make some use of having Forest back, haven't you? Otherwise, they're just kind of like there. It's a case of what can we do with them? So I thought, yeah, this is what we could do. And what else would you be doing? I mean, it's 9 o'clock on a Monday. You'd probably be watching some Z-list celebrity eat a bull's penis. Talking of bull penises, we'll say hello to Dave in a minute. This is Leicester LTID. It is the Banter show, the rival. Good evening.
It's time! Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
You are watching and listening to Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and your favourite podcasts. Till I Die TV, your first choice for everything Leicester City. Tune in and join in now.
And now, here's your host.
All right, Chris.
All right, well, come along. Yes, it is. It is football fans, the rivals. Let us bring my co-host in. He will be here every Monday, God willing, at 9 o'clock. He'll probably be about as welcome as Matt Hancock on a hospital ward, but let's get him in anyway and say good evening, Dave.
How are you, Chris? Here I am again. Yeah. What kind of person? I'm hiding behind enemy lines again, taking refuge a few miles away. Do you know what I mean? I must be
hiding in plain sight. They call it, I think, don't they?
I think it is, mate. Yes. A tricky in Fox territory, mate.
Yeah. I have to ask you, are you partial to a bit of bull penis?
Blimey, that's the nearest likeness to Matt Hancock I've seen in a long time, Chris. I mean, unbelievable. Or, Chris, a lot of Forest fans might say that that's a very good representation of Andre Mariner or maybe Lee Mason from Stockley Park. I don't know, mate.
Well, I could understand that. Can I just say, quickly talking, and I don't want to get all political here, but talking about very briefly Matt Hancock, I know I don't want you to go and watch it because I want you to stop here and obviously watch this channel, guys, but record it or watch it on catch up. But do download the I'm a Celebrity app because you get 5 free votes every night on that for the trial. When it comes in, don't vote him out. Don't get him out straight away. Leave him in there and just keep voting for him to do the trials.
Do it, folks.
He knows he's going to.
I hope the lovely Leicester City people out there who let me start by saying well done to Leicester City, Chris. A wonderful win at the weekend. Some super football. A pleasure to watch. Our game was a rambunctious roller coaster, which left me completely knackered at the end. And I got home and I watched Leicester play some lovely football. So well done to all you foxes out there. I'm sure it's a very happy weekend.
Thank you so much for that. All I can say in reply to that.
I don't know, it's so difficult not to look smug at this point.
There's somebody else I'd like to see in a jungle, Chris.
Yes. But no, thank you. I mean, I must admit, all sort of banter aside, and we're going to have plenty of banter on here. When I looked at the result, the results about 90 minutes, because we were going to go live at obviously kick off at 5:30. I thought, yes, Brentford are doing it for us. And then, how many lives? You've got more lives than a bloody black cat that hasn't crossed the road yet.
I tell you what, mate, it was like 4 or 5 games in 1 hour. Was for 40 minutes. My lot were really, really good. They played some great football, some neat passing, good stuff. They looked good. They looked confident. They looked like it was organically coming together.
Yeah.
And then there was this, to be frank, a nonsense of a penalty decision.
Yeah.
And it just changed everything. What he did, it kind of deflated Forest. And you can look at that 2 ways. You can say, well, it's understandable that they were deflated because it was such a debatable decision. But then again, they have to be strong enough to put it to one side and say, sod that, let's go and attack Brentford and take it out of them. But Forest just sort of acted as if they'd been kicked in the crown jewels. And actually, the worst thing that happened for Brentford, if you like, was Brentford taking the lead. I mean, a beautiful goal by Visser, a lovely lob, but it snapped Forest out of their trance. And from the second Brentford goal onwards, there was only one team going to score. So probably in the end, the draw was probably a fair result, but it feels to us like it was 2 lost rather than 1 gained, because, I mean, Brentford had 2 shots on goal and scored twice. We had 6 on target in the first half. So it definitely felt with Forest that, if you put the Arsenal game aside where we were outclassed, no complaints whatsoever, it was kind of a piece with the way the Liverpool game had gone. So it was disappointing not to get 3 out of it. But hey-ho.
Do you not come away from that game not looking at not getting any points to actually thinking, well, we've salvaged a point. It's another game we've not lost.
I think that's a fair assessment, mate. I kind of walked out like, whew, got something. Yeah. Getting something was better than it looked for a long. The way that Forest looked, like down on themselves from half time to I think it was sort of Visser scored with 15 minutes to go, something like that. Forest were kind of nowhere and were poor. So to come away with something in the end, and at the time we were 2-1 down. I remember I was sat in the City ground. We were 2-1 down and not looking like we were going to score again. Leeds were 3-1 down to Bournemouth at one point. Wolves were level, and then Leeds did what Leeds did, and fair play to them. That took a lot of doing. And it dragged Bournemouth nearer to us as well.
Oh, I looked at that one and thought, oh, good, Bournemouth are winning. And then I looked back and thought, oh, bugger, Leeds have won. But whoever had lost that was going to get dragged back into the mire. Luke's in, of course, he is big Forest fan. Good evening, Luke. How are you? Mike is in. Good evening, Mike. Last chance to sort of say what a wonderful team Leicester are. We're going to stuff Newport tomorrow night. Fingers crossed. He's a Newport fan. He's going to get revenge tomorrow. Terry does say I have 1 or 2 things I would like Dave to clarify.
I'll try, Terry.
Terry. I wonder what they are. And this is the thing, right? It's what I was saying, and I'll bring the table up in a second, but nobody's been cut adrift yet.
No.
And
no.
I look at Leicester and I'm thinking in a normal season, I would be looking at that and thinking, we could be 3 or 4 points off safety here at this point. I know it's not a lot, but once that gap starts building, in your mind it gets bigger and bigger. And especially with us having this break coming up to the World Cup, to me, not being in the bottom 3, and I'm not being sort of sarcastic, but not being in the bottom 3, just mind games, it is good.
Yeah.
You're on 10 points. The biggest thing for you is the goal difference.
Yeah. I mean, if you think the Manchester City away, Leicester away, and Arsenal away have been serious debits for us, if you like. So we're going to have to work. I do think we've take the Arsenal game out. We've tightened up since that night at the King Power. So I do think I actually do think that we're gradually, slowly, incrementally moving in the right direction. But as you say, Chris, nobody, I don't think, will be cut adrift by the time we sort of finish next Sunday tea time after the last two on Sunday. You know, so I mean, we've got Palace, and like they played well at West Ham yesterday, but they lost 3-0 at Everton previously. Bournemouth have lost 4 on the trot now, and Bournemouth, I think, they play Everton next week.
They do.
Southampton, whoever takes over there, whether it's Nathan Jones or whoever, his first task will be to try and win at Anfield. So I can't see Southampton getting away from us. Wolves play Arsenal on Saturday night. I cannot see Wolves winning that. Although I think they'll make it tricky for Arsenal, but I think Arsenal will have too much from it then. So
they have got a new manager though, Wolves, haven't they now?
Lopetegui, yeah. So you know, it's. I mean, that's the thing with some of the Forest fans. You know, some of the Forest fans are like looking at Villa and Wolves and probably Southampton, thinking that we need a sacking, and I'm like, hang on a minute, we sacked for 20 years, and it got us nowhere. We've got the best guy we've had for 23 years. He's got loads of credit in the bank. Let's keep him. I've struggled, Chris, to understand where somebody can probably, be fating Steve as a god in May and then decide, 2 months later that he's got to go. I find that kind of juvenile.
Some fans call for the manager's head after 5 games, and then 4 games later they're saying how wonderful he is.
Yeah, but the thing is, mate, for us, as you just alluded to, and you're dead right, our big fear was that come after next weekend and this palaver in Qatar, that we'd be cut adrift. Well, that's not going to happen now.
No.
And if you look at the table, you've strung a nice little run together. I have laughed when people were like wanting sackings and all this kind of stuff last night. I thought, well, Leicester could have got rid of Brendan. They could have got rid of Danny Wood, and look at Leicester now. So these things can go one of 2 ways, Chris.
They can, definitely. And I will just very neatly leads me into this. Sorry, that was a bit louder than I intended it to be. But yeah, I write for the BBC every Tuesday. There's a piece on I think every club has one, a Tuesday talking point, and I write the one for Leicester City. And I've held my hands up and I said, look, Top, who obviously runs the club and owns the club now, knows more than I do about running Leicester City, because I quite rightly last season was saying, give Brendan till the end of the season. I didn't want him gone last season. He had, 30 odd injuries, 19 of them were defensive players. Give him until we see how we go on next season. Unfortunately, we didn't go on very well next season. We had the 5 to Brighton, the 4 to Arsenal, the 6 to Tottenham. And yes, I one of my posts from a few weeks ago on the BBC was, Rodgers, please get out of our club. Exactly.
How's it aged, Chris? How's it aged, mate?
Yeah, lasted well, that one.
It's aged like I'm aging, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but that's football. But I have said, and I've come out and said, look, quite rightly, I was critical of him with the start we had. But we didn't know all the facts, because those facts weren't released until sort of the Man United game about the FFP and all that. And I think what Top has done, he's looked at this and gone, do you know what? I haven't been able to back my manager. Not that I don't want to, because as soon as we had a bit of money, we went and got Faze. What a bloody signing.
Hey, Chris, sorry, mate, can I just interrupt you? When I think about Leicester and Leicester's sort of resurgent, if you like, I think it ties in with Wout Faze. Absolutely.
And Lars Nusden, however you pronounce it, the set piece coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, he's brilliant, is Wout Faze. But I think what I say, he's looked at that and gone, I didn't back him. Not that I didn't want to, I just couldn't afford to. And so maybe I'll give him that little bit longer. And look at him now. It's clear. And it's good to see, mate. I mean, Brendan, I think
I think the Forest game definitely helped Leicester.
Oh God, yes,
It provided them. I think it provided. It was a much needed cup final for Leicester. You know, and let's make no bones about it. Technically, experientially, Leicester City are a better side than Nottingham Forest. It's just the way of it. We're promoted.
We've been up in the, how long have we been up here? It's like it's like when Leeds played Bournemouth. Their experience, Bournemouth could not hold on to the lead.
No. So I think that game for Leicester, the Forest match, my torment that night was good for all the Foxes, definitely. And I think they've taken that on. I mean, even in the only defeat against Manchester City, I think Leicester emerged with credit.
Yes.
So, and the way that, I actually, the best performance I think was at Goodison at the weekend. I think it was a complete performance. I couldn't find a Leicester City player who didn't do a shift. They were all Kiernan Dewsbury Hall again. I think is unsung. Should get more credit. He's a lovely player. Harvey looked sharp again. It all looked hanging together nicely. The one that makes me laugh is the Wolves game, right? Because actually, that was Leicester doing Forest a favour by keeping Wolves near to us. And I just kind of can't stop sniggering. I think it was something like Wolves had 21 shots. Leicester had 5 and won 4-0. And is Yuri Tielemans is he keeping like one of those for every goal of the month competition?
I did say earlier, I think he's going to be having his own goal of the month, goal of the season competition just for his goals. I mean, that Forest game. I mean, I said when you beat Liverpool, and we obviously wanted Liverpool to win for obvious reasons, but when you beat Liverpool, you did a job on them. You went there. You put the players, you could say you did a Jose, you parked the bus, whatever, but you did the job. You got the 3 points. It was definitely, a foul and what have you. Great free kick. But that confidence that not just if that had been Southampton, you'd have said, we got 3 points. But beating Liverpool, the confidence that gave you, and I think with the Forest game for us, especially with what happened last season in the FA Cup, we need that. And had we lost that, the crowd would have turned nasty. Brendan might not have lasted.
True.
We then got the Bournemouth game. Unfortunately, we lost, having been 1-0 up. But since then, we have conceded 25 goals, which is only 5 less than yourself. But like you, we had those big defeats.
Isn't it funny though, Chris? Isn't it funny in a way? Our FA Cup run last year, which I think did so much to kind of boost our league campaign in the Championship, it's going to come back to haunt us a bit because Leicester have taken revenge. And I think when we went to the Emirates last week, I think Forest set themselves up for a fall because Arteta will have had all the Arsenal guys in their sort of cinema, meeting room, whatever. They'll watch the whole Forest-Liverpool game and Arteta will have turned to them and said, listen, mate, don't take Forest lightly like you did in the Cup last year. And also they will have looked at how Forest played Arsenal. And he will also have said, I'm sure he will have brought up that defeat at the City Ground last year where I think Forest were good value against Arsenal in the Cup last year and actually very good value against Leicester in the FA Cup.
Very good.
So I think Arsenal and Leicester in those games against us, I'm fairly certain that Brendan and Mikel would have said, look, we owe these one. And especially, I thought going to Arsenal, we stood no chance, mate. I mean, Dor asked me a score prediction and I had Arsenal to win. I didn't think it'd be that heavy, but I thought Arsenal would be too much for us based on the fact that nobody was going to take us lightly after the Liverpool game. And I tell you what, Liverpool did take us lightly. And Klopp, I thought Klopp at the end showed a little bit of a classless side to him when he said it was us against ourselves. Oh, so Nottingham Forest weren't out there. And actually, Forest, Chris, a lot of people will say, mate, that Forest maybe got lucky, but I think Forest could have had other goals on top of the one that Taiwo scored.
Like I said, you went out, you had a job to do, and you did the job. But welcome to the Premier League, where if you're not one of the big 6, then you never turn up to games.
Exactly, mate.
Exactly. We've had that for a few years. But that Forest game was. You've got to say, as Brendan Rodgers going in there, we're at home. they played us off the park in the FA Cup last season as holders. This isn't Southampton. This isn't Watford. This is Nottingham Forest. And that crowd out there is going to be baying for blood.
Yeah,
and it was like two different teams, but like you say, Wout Faes, what a buy-in for us.
Oh, it's been terrific, mate.
But also, this defensive coach has come in, and since the Forest game, we've let 2 goals in.
Yeah.
Before that, we'd let in 23. We've had, last season, I can remember a commentator on one of our games going like, I think it was West Ham, we've got a corner against Leicester. That's almost like getting a goal. Oh, West Ham have scored. Literally that quickly. We were awful. Now, we have had, this is how sad it is, because I have to write this, 27 corners against us in the last 3 games. Haven't conceded 1 goal from those corners.
And you know what, Chris? When we came to the King Power that night, I understood Steve's selection that night. He picked Cheku Kouyaté and he paid Taiwo. And I think the idea was that, let's get some height in there and put Leicester under pressure at corners. But that night, and it's typical football, everything that kind of we sort of hoped for and envisaged in trying to win at the King Power, the exact opposite happened. And ain't that the way of it? And like you say, night, the atmosphere in the King Power was definitely a help to Leicester. So I like Brendan Rodgers. I think he's a good guy. Yeah, and I think, and I'm glad to see that he's picked up. And it's about if people say to me Cooper's got to go, then I'm going to say, well, Leicester didn't get rid of Brendan. Yeah. Had Burnley kept Daichi last year, they may have stayed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this stick or twist business, it's a gamble either way. But
definitely is. You mentioned Danny Ward. He was the devil incarnate at the start of the season. Drop him, bring Iverson in because he saved 2 penalties against a 4th-tier team and all this. Look at him in the team of the week last week, along with Madison and Tielemans. The turnaround has been absolutely like whoa, But Sean's just asking, where's Leicester playing next and where to? We're actually away to West Ham this weekend. This weekend. I tell you what, winnable for Leicester, Chris. It is now. I read an interesting little piece today where somebody was kind of inferring that some of West Ham's are looking after themselves before they go to Qatar. Wow. So I think Leicester could win there. I've just been on. I was watching the West Ham channel before I came on here, a channel that's coming on mine on Thursday, and we always have a bit of a laugh and banter. And the fans are really, really picking on Moyes at the moment. Very, very anti-Moyes. But no, as you look at that there, like I say, you're on 10. What's interesting, Chris, you look at that bottom half, take Brentford out, but you look at Leeds downwards, and everybody, in terms of losses, there's not that much between any of them. No, it's just those fine margins. Leeds, if the Leicester Forest game was a sort of a cathartic game for Brendan and for Leicester, then Leeds going to Liverpool last week. It's funny. I started watching that game, and I kind of wanted Liverpool to win to keep Leeds, in the mix, in the mire with us. But after 10 minutes. I got so kind of irritated by Liverpool's complacency and Liverpool's, we only have to turn up to win, that I was then found myself rooting for Leeds United. And when they scored their winner, I was actually, from a neutral's point of view, I thought fair play to Leeds. So, Jesse Marsh was on the rack and he's managed to get 2 terrific wins out of his team. So it just shows that any of them from us, now Lopetegui's come in, Wolves could do it. That if Wolves were to beat Arsenal on Saturday night, and the way things are going, all of these teams that we're looking at there are capable of picking up a win that you don't expect. When you should mention Arsenal, just as Miss Melina comes in, who is a big Arsenal fan. Hi, Melina. Hi, Melina. You got home well. She came over from Canada and managed to see which game was it you saw? Was it
Probably
Forest
us.
5-0? Was it?
Hey, let me tell you about when I was coming back from the Emirates, right? My old man rang me up and he goes, "How's your day been?" Expecting me to be like completely gutted and deflated. I said, "You know what? Take the game out. It's done now. I've got to accept it.
Yeah.
We lost 5-0, fair dues." I said, "I've had a really, really good day. I had a ride on the tube like a big kid." And all I would say, Chris, the only downside that I found of going to the Emirates to experience the ground was I had a vegan pasty, mate, for £8.95. And if I'd thrown it at somebody, I think I might have fractured a skull. Let's just say that. It was vegan. I tell you why it was vegan, Chris. You couldn't get inside it to get at the filling, mate. You know what I mean?
Well, Terry's just asked you what the highlight of the day was. Obviously, it was your vegan.
I kept thinking of the vegan pasty to take my mind off what Martinelli and the rest were doing to Forest. You know what I mean?
Well, that's good. I mean, you look at that. You look at that there, 10 points. If you beat Palace, and you've got to look at that and go, that is a winnable game for you.
I mean, the thing is, Chris, bonkers though it might seem, say we were to beat Palace 3-0. Yeah, I think we could beat Palace, but 3-0 might be a stretch. Southampton are at Anfield. Wolves are playing Arsenal.
Yeah.
I do fancy Bournemouth to beat Everton at the Vitality. So I think, Bournemouth might, but if we were to win that, we could, well, we might be, it's unlikely we're going to be out of the bottom three, but we might be off the bottom. Do you know what I mean? So going then into the break, that's something for us to cling to a bit, but.
Well, I looked at Leicester Everton and I'm going like, well, if we beat them 3-0, we'll go above them. But of course, we didn't. We only needed to beat them 2-0 because I was adding goals onto us, but forgetting to take the goals off Everton.
Yeah.
So we've jumped over them. And for me, I do not want to be in that bottom three for the World Cup and look at it for 5 weeks. But, the thing is, you are not, as I said, and I do honestly think this is important. I don't know whether you were bothered. I was bothered by the 11 points with Derby County position.
Well, do you know what, mate? It's funny you bring that up because it doesn't mean anything to Steve. It doesn't mean anything to Tatey or Andy Reid or Jamie Robinson or Filippo Giraldi, our backroom boys. I don't think it means anything to the team. Well, it might mean something to Joseph Worrell and it might mean something to Ryan Yates and Brennan because they're Nottingham boys. But I don't really think it means anything to the team and the club and everything. It kind of means a bit to us.
Yes.
I'm a big kid. So it means if we can go into the World Cup and we've got that sort of, that monkey off the back, as it were, But really, I mean, I did listen to the Gary Baldy Red podcast today, which was Darren Fletcher was on, and there's a cracking good lad, Forest fan goes on, called Greg Mitchell. And Greg was saying, "Oh, it's not important. But I almost got the feeling that the way he was saying it, it was living rent free in his head, mate. You know what I mean? So yeah, that 11 points. I remember last season, or a couple of seasons ago, last season when Norwich went past it, the season before I think when Huddersfield or whatever went past it, we were all celebrating like we'd done it. You know what I mean? So maybe we will do it this weekend, but. Palace not to be
before the end of the season, whatever happens.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's still 72 points to play for. Yeah, and that's a lot. You know what I mean? So, and as Darren Fletcher was saying today, and I've got a lot of respect for Darren. He's a good commentator. And that if Forest can get to 35, 36, 37, 38, then we're in with a chance, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But, you've got to look at finishing 17th.
Oh, mate, that's exactly that's all I care about.
Yes.
17th, Chris, hanging on by these. Villa did it when they got a draw at West Ham and Jack scored a couple of seasons ago. I think Leeds did it at Brentford last year. Brighton have had to do it. So there are precedents for what we're trying to do. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, definitely. And, I mean, look at when we came up. I mean, we were bottom longer than any team's ever been bottom and stayed up. And, all right, we finished 14th at the end, but I mean that doesn't. You look at that and it doesn't tell you the story of the season at all.
Actually, Chris, when you mentioned that, mate, and I thought back to it, and remember, I think it was a season or 2 seasons before you won the Premier League. It might have been the season before, I don't know. And I went and looked at Leicester's results for that season, and there's quite a lot of similarity with what Leicester did in that season to kind of the way things are going for us now.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing late surge by Leicester that kind of came,
We didn't have we'd come up as champions. We'd lost the Nottingham, I think, to Watford in the semis. I think, was that the season that we did beat you on the way to the semis?
Yeah, 3-2, I think, mate.
Yeah, it was like a knockout scored in the last minute, and our commentator was going, allez le bleu, allez le bleu. But we got through to Watford. We then had a penalty that was never a penalty that Knockout managed to miss twice somehow.
Yeah.
At the other end.
Our old friend Anthony.
But in a way, it did us well because we went up the next season having broken virtually every record we could have done. We were not losing any game by a huge margin.
Yeah.
It was 2-1, 1-0, but we weren't winning. I mean, don't forget, we started off with a draw against Everton, 1-1. I think we got 0-0 possibly against Arsenal, not sure. Then we had Man United quite early on, and we had that 5-3 win.
Amazing. I remember that.
It was all looking good, and then Pearson, for some reason, decides to become the new Tinkerman. The season before, you could have predicted the team 6 games in advance. Now, you scored a couple of goals, you were dropped. You just couldn't work it out. And it all, and that's, I think, why, because I think there's 2 stories here. And I was watching, funnily enough, yesterday, I was watching Jamie Carragher's interview after we won it on Monday Night Football. And he referred he referenced Nottingham Forest, coming up and winning Europe and what have you. But as he said, it was different then. And I think if we'd have come up and stayed up that season and then had a couple of seasons where we were just mid-table, it wouldn't have been as big news. Yeah. But because we'd gone from bottom one Christmas to top the following Christmas, that's what it was. And we should never take away, though, I love Brian Clough as a manager. I think he was absolutely brilliant. I think he should have retired. I wish he'd retired before he did. And not retired when he'd gone down.
Bless him,
he was. They should have been England manager. But what you did back in the day was the equivalent of what we did. It possibly was a more level playing field then, but only winning the European Cup, but defending it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Chris, I had this thought where I was kind of, I like a bit of football history, and I was kind of thinking of English football miracles, right? And I think of Ipswich Town winning the league in 1962. I think of what we did, which from when Brian took over, we were like in a rickety slum of an old ground in front of 12 or 13,000 with, it was a mud heap, and then we end up like winning 2 European Cups, league title, whatever, league cups, and we became, I think, for a lot of people, we became everybody's second favourite team. I think that's a miracle. I think Wimbledon winning the FA Cup is a football miracle.
Yes.
I think AFC Bournemouth under Eddie Howe from 17 points at the bottom of League 2 to the Premier League in 8 years is a miracle, and Leicester City.
Yeah.
Leicester City was the last.
And you know what? I
actually
think that we did Bournemouth a favour because funnily enough, I came down. The first thing I remember about any football down here was Bournemouth players outside the pavilion with buckets collecting money to try and keep the club going. So I'd followed that journey along because it's my local team. I didn't support them.
Well, I did through living in Christchurch, Chris. You know what I mean? I was there myself. So
and I think the fact that all the limelight was on us took it off Bournemouth a little bit. But what he achieved there, and I think he's getting his just rewards now at being at Newcastle, Eddie Howe.
Oh, and he's, when Eddie took that job, Chris, I've huge respect. I might have said it before, and I apologise if I repeated myself, but I think when the greatest of them all is looking down, as he's doing tonight, he's watching all of us, and he's going, "Hey, young Asprey, behave yourself on that channel. Get your hands out of your pockets."
That is good.
Right? He'll be saying, "Hey, Asprey, represent Nottingham Forest properly," right? So I know he's looking down, but I think he will look. I think the great one will be looking down, and when he looks around, he will look at I think he'll say he'll like Edward Howe, and he'll look at Edward Howe as somebody he really admires. And like when Eddie took the job at Newcastle, and maybe I was coloured by what had gone on with Ashley and all the stuff that had gone on before, and how massively underachieving that fantastic. It's a fantastic club, Newcastle. I went there start of the season, Chris, and I would recommend anybody to go and watch a game at St James's Park. It's wonderful. We lost, we were outplayed, but we got an amazing welcome from the Geordies, right? It's something you must do as a football fan. But when Eddie took that job, I kind of thought, I wonder that Eddie had bitten off more than he could chew with all the politics swirling around and the moral questions and all this. But you know what? He's been in there, I think, a year to the day now, and he's a tremendous manager. And I think it was a sort of a race to the England job after Southgate for like him and Graham Potter. But if anybody's going to get it, it's definitely Eddie. You know, I think Graham might be the one who's bitten off more than he could chew by going to Chelsea. But time will tell. No, Eddie, right. I tell you what, mate, I've got my top four. I was asked my top four last week on another show, and City will obviously win the league. I think City are by far the best team. I think we can all agree on that. I've got Leicester. I've got Arsenal. I nearly Freudian slip.
Leicester in second. What you're going to say?
Cluffy's hand has just come down. He's got the Almighty sitting at his right hand, as Brian, and his hand's come down, bonked me on the head, and said, "Don't make Leicester City runners up." But I think Arsenal will be second. I really like Arsenal. Love the way they play.
Yeah,
a revelation this year. I did have Tottenham finishing third because I thought they're quite rugged, but I'm not sure after watching yesterday. I think Liverpool might eventually sneak back up. But I've got Newcastle finishing in the Champions League places, mate. And I think again, the neutrals' favourite teams, I would imagine, are Arsenal and Newcastle, because I think they're the two best to watch. You know, City, we all know City are on a plateau above everybody else. And we all, I went to City and saw us get 6-0 and found myself applauding what City were doing. It was just like, I tell you what, that night, mate, we all stood in the away end, and we did that thing where, we were like looking for optimism, and there was none to be found. We were like 6-0 down or something, and like Pep took Thor off, right, so he could change his hammer, replacing Erling Haaland, and we all went, "Oh, thank God he's going off." It's Kevin De Bruyne, and we all sort of sank to our knees, you know what I mean? And then they gave Erling Haaland, rightly, because he scored a brilliant hat-trick, they gave him the man of the match award. We were all stood in the away end applauding. It was bizarre, you know what I mean? So,
this is part of the fun of being. I can remember when we came up under, a while ago, it was going back to like the 70s when we came up under Jock Wallace. And we went straight back down again, but I can remember seeing Kevin Keegan play.
Yeah,
I think he was at Southampton, and I'm sat there thinking, I'm watching Kevin Keegan. You have to take that part of it and enjoy it as well.
Without wanting to prostrate myself at the feet of all the Leicester City universe and all your lovely viewers. I kind of went away from the King. I went away from the King Power, thinking, at last I've seen the real James Maddison, because I didn't see him in the FA Cup last year.
No, in fact, I think you saw a lot of our players for the first time. I'm telling you,
we did too much, mate. Too much.
Yes, I mean, just say, get my wife's name out your mouth. We will be looking at the Champions Europa League draw in a bit. I just want to say, Terry said here, Forest loves splashing the clash on players. Yep, first £1 million player was Trevor Francis.
Terry might know this, that Trevor came in. I always remember Trevor signing on and Brian wandering in, and he'd just been playing squash, I think. And as Trevor's signing, and like Trevor's there, and Helen, his sadly departed wife now, we lost her a couple of years ago, very sadly. I think there was the Forest chair was there. Brian wandered in with a tracksuit and like a red anorak, and was basically bonking Trevor Francis on the head with his squash racket. And it was the most bizarre thing, and that was just Brian being Brian, obviously. Trevor signed, and his first job, I don't know if it was like Brian or Peter Taylor that sorted it out, was he had to go and make the tea at a local sort of non-league ground for the under-18s, I think. So the under-18s were playing, and there was Trevor Francis, like basically saying, "Do you want any milk and sugar in that, mate?" You know what I mean? So,
he paid you back. He paid you back, well, didn't he?
Yeah.
I heard a Brian Clough story the other day, and I don't know how true it was, but it was an ex-player that was telling it, and it did make me giggle. And it was, I think Forest, or was it at Derby? I think it was Forest, and you'd got beaten, and he went to the referee. He went to the goalkeeper and said, you were bad. Really picked on him. Said, I want to see you tomorrow. I'm coming round. And he turned up the next morning at his house and said, right, get your kit. I said, well, we're going for practice. No, you're gonna turn out for this local team, whatever it was. And he turned out, and I think he got fined or something for being unregistered. And he made him pay it.
He did. I met Kenny Burns, the great Kenny Burns. Right, what a character he is. What a character he always was. Because Brian said they signed him. They went down to Perry Bar Dog Track to get Kenneth. He said, we took back the car that he'd pinched and we pinched him a new one. Right. and Kenny Burns, they were playing Ipswich Forest, were at the City Ground. And I think it's when this is part when the great team was in its pomp. Yeah. And Burns had the ball out on the right in the sort of inside the Forest half. And he saw Frank making a run, dear old Frank, making a run down the left. Yeah. And Burns thought, I'll play it to Frank. So he played it basically across the field. And it landed at Frank's feet. But in doing so, it skimmed Eric Gates's head. And they went in at half time. And Brian basically said, Kenneth, I'll have a week's wages for that if you don't mind, mate. And he fined him because don't ever play a ball across my 18-yard box again, But no, the stories are legion, mate. And I do think, Chris, on a serious note, I think United have struggled in a similar way. I think Tottenham did when Bill Nicholson finished, and United struggled when Alex packed up. Certain managers become kind of synonymous. They're gods within their club. And I think that, the next man up to fill those shoes. I mean, Frank did a really good job because I think he was Brian's appointed nominee. But thereafter, people have really struggled to fill the shoes that Brian left, And if anything,
we had the same with Martin O'Neill, one of Clough's boys, when he came to us, and he won a sort of 3 League Cups in 4 years. We won 2 of them. In fact, when we beat Tottenham, when we beat Tranmere in the last one, that was when I actually bet Kenny Burns, and it was in the toilets at some motorway service station. And I thought, that's Kenny Burns. Oh, and I turned around, all right, Kenny, so who's going to win then? And in fairness to him, knowing he was surrounded by Leicester fans in this toilet, he did say Leicester. Yeah. You bought Trevor Francis for $1 million, the first £1 million player. But then we went and got Jamie Vardy, the first £1 million non-league player.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you what, I love Vardy. I love Vardy's story. I think, Stockbridge Steels to Halifax, I believe, then to Fleetwood, and then on to Leicester. And no, I haven't got a relative called Sarah, Terry, I'm afraid. No. I have got female relatives, but not one called Sarah. So I'm sorry about that, mate. Vardy's story from where he came from. And actually, that sort of trajectory he took, I mean, it's fairy tale stuff. And he might be coming into the twilight now, Jamie, but what a player he's been, I mean, the year that Leicester won the league, I just thought it was just such a charming thing, you know what I mean? So I'd loved him to play for us, I really would.
Talking of winning the league.
Yeah.
And it isn't my size, unfortunately. But this shirt here, it has a few signatures on the front,
right,
of those teams for the Leicester players when we won the league. But on the back, and I'm having it framed on the back.
Wow!
Believe it or not, no, it's not Jamie Vardy actually.
Is it Rebecca Vardy?
It's Kasabian that have signed it.
All right. Oh, well, Serge and Tom and all the lads and what have you.
Well, when there were 4 of them, yes.
Like Kasabian, seen Kasabian.
Yeah, I love.
In fact, Chris, I saw him at the Bournemouth International Centre, mate.
Well, I saw them because, of course, they were there when we had the party in the park. After that's where they signed it, and I went to see them at the King Power. because they did a performance at the King Power. Because obviously, huge Leicester fans. But like I say, Tom is no longer with them. Sean, you asked me the other day about Bristol City. I do like them because you've got our ex-manager Nigel Pearson. He also told him to get his hands out of his pockets.
He did. He did. That's true, Terry. What he did, mate, he was on it was the Midlands TV Football Awards, and Gary Newborn was presenting, and Trevor won the award for either the best player or the best young player, and Brian presented it with him. And he said, like, you're a very talented young man now. Take your hands out of your pockets, right? And the ripple went round the room. But Brian being Brian, he was deadly serious, mate. You know what I mean? So,
I am going to have to get you to do a jingle for me in that voice. I really
maybe,
am.
Mate. I'm loving. I mean, Sean's comment there is funny. That night when we were 4-0 down, it wasn't particularly funny, but obviously I've moved on from that now. You know. So, yeah, there was a little bit of that, but you know, Brian was a rogue. You know, I wouldn't say he was a perfect human being by any stretch of imagination, but certainly,
all I will say
or any of us,
be the first manager that is clean to throw the first stone, and I tell you what, none of them would pick one up.
Yeah.
No, Sean, it wasn't my Christmas present. In fact, my brother owns a staging company. And he did all the staging at Victoria Park that Leicester players and everybody was up on. And he wasn't able to get every single player's signature. There's a few on there. Danny Simpson's on there. Jamie Vardy is on the front. He's got black on a blue shirt, but he's got but Kasabian on the back. It's just So I bought it off him the other day. He needed the money, so I bought it off him. But yes. But I just think what he did at that club, and I wish he'd left, like I say, a few seasons before. He was never the same once Peter Taylor had passed.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree with that. You know,
I think it was the same with Martin O'Neill and John Robertson as well.
Yeah, and McGovern, obviously, you know,
because everybody says to me, "Oh, wouldn't you have Nigel Pearson back? Wouldn't you?" I love Nigel Pearson, and I met him and spoke to him a couple of times with my son and what have you at matches. But he isn't the same for me without Craig Shakespeare.
I think definitely, Chris, that when Peter arrived from Brighton, I think it was.
Yes,
Forest just became this almost unstoppable force. I mean, we went 42 league games without defeat until Liverpool beat us at Anfield in a cauldron, and they had to work hard to beat us that day. Liverpool did. You know, it was like there was just something about Forest. I mean, my sort of Forest supporting days were begun by my dad was on the scouting staff at Forest, and he reported to the great, and he's still great, Alan Hill. I saw Alan at the game on Saturday. I mean, Alan's in his 80s now, and what a wonderful character. So my dad used to sort of run kids teams in our area. He contacted a few clubs. Forest sent Alan Hill to meet my dad. He set a game up, went on from there. My dad got invited onto the scouting staff, and then I kind of thought, well, if I've got a family connection, this has got to be my club. Now, at the time that happened, Forest were in the wilderness before Brian took over, and then the next minute, literally, we're league champions against all expectations. We are League Cup winners against Liverpool. We're then into the European Cup. We're knocking Liverpool out on the way to Munich via what I consider to be the greatest game ever played in this country, which was the European Cup semi-final first leg at the City Ground when they drew 3-3 with Cologne. A greater football match I've never seen. There was no grass on the pitch because Brian had it flooded. I'm sure he had all the ground staff lads whittling on it. You know. And although it did help Cologne to put their Japanese sub on, you know. So sorry, mate. That was really. I telegraphed that, didn't I? But what I was going to say, mate, is then we're like winning it again. We're winning the League Cup, beating Southampton, and you're like, this is Nottingham Forest. This shouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? So I tell you what, mate. On a serious note, when I go to Forest now, I mean, I'm 58 and a half, and I'm one of the lucky guys who lived through that great era. Yeah. And when I go to the ground, I see lots of youngsters, you know, kids and teenagers and young lads in their sort of 20s who and I look round And I've been so sad for them for so long because they've had nothing to cheer in their lives for not being a Nottingham Forest supporter. And I just think it's fantastic now for all our kids. And I tell you what, the diversity of the crowd at Forest is fantastic. You've got people of all ages. I've got a wonderful couple sit behind me in the Trent End. They're in the 70s, John and Chris, and they're fabulous. And then I've got a lad of 15 sits next to me. He's had nothing to cheer. When we beat Sheffield United in that penalty shootout, young Jack who sits next to me is a fabulous kid. He was in tears. I remember I didn't go on the pitch because I don't believe that's the right thing to do. That's a trespass, right? And I will never go on a football pitch, right? I just stood in the Trent End with hugging this kid who was in floods of tears because we got to Wembley, So it's really nice for those youngsters, as I'm sure there were youngsters who followed Leicester City, and they wanted something to hang their hats on and to be able to kind of, be able to strut
my son. One of the things I've said that I'm just glad. I mean, I think there's 13 clubs that have won everything in this country, and I say everything. I mean, as in FA Cup, League Cup, and Premier League, or top division, I should say. Yeah. And obviously, then you can include League One and League Two if you wanted. But there's 13 that have won the big ones. My son, unfortunately, because he was at uni at the time, because I think I said to you, I gave my season ticket up at the end of the Great Escape season. But I was able to get a ticket to the Everton game when we had the Nessun Dorma with Andrea Balotelli and all
amazing.
that.
Amazing.
And I was in tears hugging some guy I'd never met before, never seen since, because I wasn't in a normal seat. And I was so disappointed that I couldn't take my son to that and share that with him. Yeah. But then the next season, we were in the. I was stood with my son at my football ground at what is a little football club if you compare it to the so-called big boys, listening to the Champions League music. Yeah. As they walk out, and I will admit I was in tears. Yeah. And I was in tears 6 times because we got through to because everybody said, "Oh, Leicester City." Arsene Wenger, Leicester City going to be an embarrassment to English football. I think it was Arsenal that season that got beat 10-2 over 2 legs. So I cried. FA Cup, couldn't get a ticket because of COVID, and there were, wasn't all the fans there. At the end, when the whistle went, I was looking out the window because again I was in floods of tears. My son said something to me without thinking. I turned round, and he's 25. He was in floods of tears. Yeah, and this is what football does to you.
It does. I tell you what, mate. I was hugging somebody when that ricochet moment happened at the weekend, and Sam Surridge heads back. Morgan has his shot. It hits poor old Ben Mee on the line. It hits Jorgensen. It goes back. Mee tries to kind of catapult it out the back of the net, but it's already crossed the line. Yeah. I was hugging some bloke. We were all pretty much close to tears. The only problem then, Chris, is that VAR sticks its nose in, and we all have to stand around thinking, well, is it a goal or not? You know what I mean? So it
I did an EPL review every Monday at 7, and I've had my say on VAR, so I'm going to back off because
I think we all have, mate. I mean, it's worthy of a program on its own, but that's not the mood. We don't want it to kill the mood tonight, do we?
No. We're getting on so well here. But it is only show 1. Let's be honest.
There's plenty of time for me to block my copybook, mate.
Ross says, "Who are your 3 to go down?" I'll let you go first.
Well, I can't say us because I'll get complete pelters. I think I fear Southampton. I actually think the worst team I've seen this year. I mean, by the table, we're the worst team, but I think we can find 3. Southampton, I think, are in big danger. It looks like Nathan Jones is coming in. I'm not entirely convinced that Nathan is the answer. I think he's made for Luton Town and nobody else. I don't know why he would ever want to leave Luton Town. Get Luton Town up. I think Bournemouth are beginning a worrying slide down the table. They've lost 4 on the bounce. And Everton have that look about them where they've hung around the lower reaches for a while without, they look like they picked up a bit, and then Leicester went there and completely outclassed them. I think Everton are in trouble. I mean, everybody at the moment, the first name that anybody's going to say if anybody's going to go down at the moment, if you're not a Nottingham Forest fan, is Nottingham Forest. I could understand that. Yeah. We are the most vulnerable team at the moment in the league. I won't argue with that, but I'm going to say we're going to finish.
At the moment, you are, but it's only a third of the season.
It is. There's a lot to play for. I mean,
yeah.
That it was interesting, Chris. You showed that bottom half of the table, and again, I go back to this idea that in terms of the losses and the wins and the draws, there isn't actually that much between them. I mean,
no.
Until yesterday, Chris, Liverpool were only 6 points ahead of us. Obviously, they win at Tottenham and they go to 19. But Liverpool were in the top half, and they were like nearer to the bottom than they were to the top. So
they were. They were only 2 points ahead of us at some point.
So I know it sounds like I'm clinging and clutching at straws, and I'm going to, but I do feel that Forest, they've kind of thrown this bucket of different things against the wall. And I do think that very, very slowly something cohesive is beginning to emerge. But I looked at Southampton yesterday, I thought they were very poor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they have the quality to stay in. If Forest were to play Southampton this Saturday, everybody would fancy Forest to beat Southampton. I think they're in danger. Bournemouth have got some really good lads. Solanke's good. Billing, I like Billing. I think he's the most laid-back footballer of us, and I'm sure he smokes a joint before every game. And they've got some good lads, but they're on a little bit of a slide. Although I think Gary O'Neill's actually a step up from Scott Parker, definitely.
I think anybody's a step up from Scott Parker, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to say at the moment the ones that I would worry about the most. Everybody else is going to say Forest, and I'm Forest as well. I'm going to look after my lot, and I say it'd be Everton, Bournemouth, and Southampton. But Lopetegui might take Wolves up, and then they may come. I mean, it's just a matter of they're gambling on a bounce. A lot of these teams, Southampton are doing it. Villa, I think Villa will probably be all right. I think they've got enough. They've got quality in their team. Yeah. They shouldn't be anywhere near this. To me, they're like Leicester. They shouldn't be in this position because the squads are too good.
These are mine. These are mine. I was desperately looking for it, but here's what I predicted at the start of the season. So it's what I'm kind of stuck with. And I didn't actually have Forest going down. And I got Josh, who I did it with, who's another Leicester fan, did have you going down. But I had Leeds because I thought they were very lucky to stay up last season.
Yeah.
Bournemouth, purely on the fact that they had Scott Parker in charge. But I think they will go down anyway now. I think they've had the peak with Gary Neal in. Southampton as well. Just shows what we know, though, because I've got Fulham 17th and they're up in 9th.
Yeah. And you know what, Chris? We've talked about revelations in sort of Newcastle and Arsenal, but Fulham have played some really good football. And
yeah,
although I would say they played well at Manchester City, but they were up against 10 men and got beat. So that doesn't really reflect that well on them.
No.
Leeds, I would definitely have said Leeds after the loss they had to Fulham at Ellen Road, where it was toxic central. But then watching them at Liverpool, I thought they were smashing at Liverpool, and I was really glad they won at Liverpool because I thought Liverpool just disregarded them as they had done us the week before.
Yeah. But can I just say, any Nottingham Forest fans watching, look where I have put you. 15, I haven't put you to go down. And you know what? I put you in that position on the fact of your manager. Because I think you've got a great manager there.
Yeah, I do.
I think he's taken a lot of players, trying to gel them together, which is going to take time. But I think you'll survive. But now, I've got to be honest with you. I still think you'll stay up. And for me, I think Wolves will go down.
Right.
I think Bournemouth will. And then Southampton, I think Everton will just about stay up again, but it might not.
Wolves don't score enough goals, Chris.
Sorry?
Wolves don't score enough. And they brought Diego Costa in. I went to Wolves a couple of weeks ago. It was an awful game. Neither side played very well, really. It was a game of 2 penalties. If Brennan sticks his penalty away, I'm happy with a point at Molineux in an awful game. They bought Diego Costa to solve their problem. Then he's more interested in sticking the nut on Ben Mee. So, Wolves, okay, they needed a manager, and it seems to me like they've got themselves a decent one, but they need to find a goal scorer from somewhere. And actually, so do we. But what I would say about us...
You know what Jesse Lingard? I thought he was the answer to all your goal scoring.
There's a major talking point, the Chronicles of Jesse Lingard. I mean,
I think, again, there's only one thing you can do when you're talking about Jesse Lingard.
I don't know, it's so difficult not to look smug at this point.
Can you stop? Listen, I'm a big fan of yours, mate, and I'm like you say, I'm putting myself out there behind Leicester City enemy lines, but to keep attacking me with the face of that man from the Cotswolds set, it really does not help me at all. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just I can't even watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire anymore. I'm a Tarrant man, but then I was brought up on Tiswas, like you probably were.
Don't start me on Tiswas. I actually watch Extreme Railway Journeys on Channel 5 at 3 in the morning if I can't sleep because of Chris Tarrant. Can I just say, I love it when these shows go off the tangent, and we're going to go off the tangent.
That's what we're here for, mate.
I have been on Tiswas.
Have you?
Yes. No, in fairness, right?
Did you get a flan in your face?
No, I wasn't on it. I was on the phone, unfortunately. But they brought it out one summer. They brought out a Tiswas summer special.
Yeah.
And they said, send jokes in. And I sent a joke in, and it got published. And I still use the same joke today. I still use it. And then me and my mate, we were watching it one day, and we said, have you noticed? Because in those days, if anybody is under 30, please go and ask your parents about this. But there used to be a thing called the post and postcards. And when you entered a competition, you filled in the answer on the back of a postcard or a sealed down envelope, let's not forget, and send it in. Now, we had noticed on watching this week in, week out, that the ones that seemed to get picked out were those that had sent in, like, folders and had done big, projects on it.
Yeah.
So I said to my best mate at the time, Andrew, I went, I think we should do that. Yeah, let's do it. I can't remember what it was on. I did it, and they rang up on the Friday night, and my mum answered and went, oh, hello, is that Mrs. Florian? She went, yes. I said, oh, it's Paul or whatever he was called from ATV, as it was in those days. I'm ringing up, we'd like to get Chris on the show tomorrow on the phone. And she thought it was her brother messing her about. She said, oh, shut up, Neville, I'm busy. I'm trying to get tea ready. He went, seriously, Mrs. Florian, we would like to get him on. Look, anyway, somehow he managed to convince me mum, and I went on and I won a Tiswas token.
Bloody hell. Hey, mate, just sit there a minute. I've got something to show you.
Oh, here we go.
It's nothing
I love this. I love this on these shows.
Right, mate, this is how juvenile I am, right?
Hey.
Let's not bother talking about football, Forest and Leicester. It's not important, is it?
No, we've had it.
Now that
wasn't
now Sally James. Wasn't she a lovely lass? Don't you reckon?
Very, very pleasant.
And when she put those rock leathers on, by gum, mate, I grew up very quickly. Let's put it like that.
I bet something did grow quickly.
Well, within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
I was a working class kid from the Midlands, so it was never going to be multicoloured swap shop. That was for kids from like Guildford and Orpington and Dorking and all that. No. So what I used to love about Tiswas, Chris.
I never got into it before Chris Tarrant started because there was some presenters.
John Asher was the first. John Asher, and then it was, I think, Peter Tomlinson. It was just a bloke presenting cartoons, and it morphed into. I mean, by the end, they were having guests on like Jasper Carrott, Steve Davis, Giant, Big Daddy, and the worst of all, they'd have Frank Carson and Bernard Manning on. I mean, it was just bizarre.
Yeah. You know? But do you remember? And if anybody's watching, sorry, me and Dave are just going to have our own little.
I'm tangential Dave, by the way, and I do apologise.
Sorry.
Tangential Dave, I get called.
But do you remember when Sally James, she used to get garter sent in from the Navy, and she used to put them up her leg?
Yeah.
Oh.
She had HMS Ark Royal on one thigh, and she had HMS Renown and HMS Repulse on the other. I think she got them from Submariners as well, but I think she kept them in a special place. I don't know.
Funny enough, the viewers have suddenly gone up on this.
Hey, quick lads, they're not talking about football. They're talking about Sally James. Get on.
Yeah, the Holly Willoughby of a day. Do you? And the thing was, I don't know if you've seen it. They did a reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right there. Do you remember OTT?
Oh, yeah, the balloon dance.
Oh. I mean, that was funny, but the whole thing with Tiswas is that it was a kids' show.
Yeah.
Kids of a certain age had no idea what was going on.
No.
Older kids and dads sort of knew what was going on.
Morning. I don't know about you. I'd be sat there on a Saturday morning, like turning around to my old man and going, "What does he mean by that, Dad?" And my dad like, "I'm not telling you." You know,
exactly. But OTT was never funny because it was never. It was hinted at on Tiswas.
Yeah.
In OTT, it was just straight out there, and to me,
it wasn't. I think it was the fact that it was a kids' show hijacked by adults. You know.
Yes.
A bit like it's a bit. If you like, Chris, this show has been hijacked by a non-adult. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, exactly. Oh,
maybe we should get back to the football, mate.
So is that an annual you've got there, or
what this one, mate? It's a DVD, the best of Tiswas, and it's got Beware the Phantom Flanflinger is back, starring Chris Tarrant, Sally James, Lenny Henry, Bob Carolgees.
Oh yes,
John Gorman of the Scaffold. Thank you very much for the entry iron.
Yeah.
And the Phantom Flanflinger, Flanderella, and the Baby Bucket Bunger, mate.
Do you remember the Dying Fly?
I would love to do it, but I just can't get it fitted on the screen, mate. But
no, this is it. If we did it, the people wouldn't see it. Otherwise, we do the Dying Fly for you.
Compost corner.
Oh God! And they had, Trevor McDonald came on. Do you remember?
Thank you, Daddy.
Yes. But they had Lenny Henry was doing him, wasn't he?
Brilliant, yeah. Maybe we could go on, couldn't we? But the viewers are probably thinking, what are these pair talking about?
Well, I'll end with this on is that I went to see Lenny Henry last year or the year before. It was before COVID, and he was talking about his childhood as a coloured person or a person of colour in Birmingham and what have you.
Yeah.
But when he started talking Tiswas, well, I'm just like, just carry on now. This is what I've come for. You know?
Yeah. But, I feel sorry for the kids. These kids who've never seen Forest win anything, they've kind of got something now. But none of them will ever see Tiswas, and I just think that's a crying shame, mate. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is. It was a classic. Got to ask you this, and then we're going to quickly look at Europe. But in fact, I tell you what, we're going to leave Europe because neither of us are in it. So we'll jump. Tiswas has kind of taken over the Champions League.
Champions League 0, Tiswas 2.
Exactly. Yes. I want to ask you this because Terry says, Dave. Mr. Dorr says we are not rivals. Do you agree that some of the matches back in the 70s were very hostile between the two groups of fans? Dorr is obviously too young to remember them years.
It's a good question, actually. I mean, nominally for a Forest fan, Terry, it's Derby County. So we were all Torquay United supporters yesterday afternoon. So I think, Derby is the nominal rival. But I went to some Forest Leicester games at the City Ground back in the 80s because I was at university in Nottingham, and lived in the city for a while. And thank you for that, Ross T. Yeah, that's a nice comment like that. And so I went to one Leicester game in particular. I remember was Forest beat Leicester 4-3. And I think Smithy was playing, Tony Seeley was playing, people like that. And it was sort of the Forest of like Nigel Clough, Paul Wilkinson, Webby. Cracking game. I think Nigel actually might have won it at the end. direct from a corner. But what I do remember is I remember walking down London Road on my Todd. Yeah, up the ramps. Yeah,
Road,
fair enough.
wow.
I'll give you that. Derby County supporters. I've got a lot of friends who are Derby County supporters. I say they're friends. Whether they are or not from their side, I don't know. But I remember walking down London Road, Chris, in Nottingham to go to the City Ground, having got off the train, and I'm walking down, and I'm aware that the Leicester City away contingent are being escorted down London Road towards, and what they do, I think they go over the bridge, over the canal, and then along Lady Bridge and into the away end of the City Ground that way.
Right.
And I had no option walking down London Road, mate, but to blend in with the Leicester City away contingent. So it got to a point where they veer off to go over the canal and down past Meadow Lane to go over Lady Bridge. And I want to go the other way. And this copper's going to me, where are you going? And I had to kind of very subtly show him my Nottingham Forest lapel badge, which, being the kind of person I was, I actually stupidly, but maybe in the end bravely and wisely, had my Forest lapel badge underneath my lapel where none of the Leicester boys could see it. Yeah. And I do remember it being hostile, I think it's probably an extreme, but intense, mate. So, yeah, I do. I think there's a rivalry. What I would say, and I might get pelters for this, the Forest fans, and I'm going to speak on behalf of as many as I can think of, regard it that like Leicester see us as rivals, but we see Derby as our rivals. Now, whether that's a Brian Clough thing or whether it's an A52 thing, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like there's that much difference in distance. I mean, Leicester might be a little bit further away, but I think I've always, my take on it, Chris, is that it's always been a sort of a Brian Clough thing, and what have you, And I don't think would it have been I don't know the history massively, but it seems to me that until Brian, obviously Brian was at Derby and did great things there, and then came to us and wrought his miracles. I think it was more to do with Brian, really. I don't know. I mean, we Derby and Forest now play for the Brian Clough Trophy, and we never ever really. And this is no disrespect to Leicester City, but we never really regarded Leicester as. I was never brought up to see Leicester as a rival. I
think from Leicester's point of view, it depends, because we are a one county team, as in, there's no other professional team in Leicestershire. So it depends where in Leicestershire you are as to who you consider to be your rival. So some people say it's Derby. Yeah. And when we beat them in the playoff final, the silence of the Rams, some would say it was Forest. And for me, it's Coventry. Now, the problem is because it's their 69 Derby, and they are closest. The thing is, though, that we haven't played Coventry for so long, because when we were down in the third, they were up in the Premier League. And I can remember when I worked, and I'm going back about 15, 20 years now, and for a long time, I used to work with a Coventry fan, and we used to have, get this, we used to have a pound bet on every game. That's how much we didn't trust our clubs. A pound bet on every game to who would win. And mostly it was me, in fairness. But I think for me, I look and think like, okay, we're not going to play Derby unless we get them in the cup. We're not going to play Coventry unless we get them in the cup. We've got Derby, we've got Forest twice. They're in the same league. You're going to want to finish above us. We're going to want to finish above you.
I don't think we will, but we want to,
No, you don't know. So that's why it's great to have you back, because although I did want Luton to come up because I've got a soft spot for Luton, but you are our nearest. We can't have a rivalry with Villa. We can't have a rivalry with Wolves. Do you know what I mean? That's who we've been having rivalry with for like 3 or 4 seasons. Welcome back just to have rivals, and you are our closest rivals. Yeah,
I think what I've noticed, certainly going to away games this year, Chris, is that you get a sense that, I mean, where have I been to? I've been to Newcastle, Everton, Leicester, City, Arsenal, Brighton. I had good trips to all of these places, and I get the sense that, like, people are quite happy to see Forest back because, and I'm not saying this again, I love my club, obviously. If there's good things about them, I'll say. If there's things I don't think is great, I'll say it. But what I would say is, whether people like it or not, we are a storied club with a history. Our problem has been living up to that history. So, I remember going to Newcastle first game of the season, and I said to a mate, I wanted to wear my red shirt first game back in the Premier League after so long, desperately looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And my mate said, "You'll not find a safer place in the world to wear away colours." And I remember I went with a couple of lads who live near me here, great guys, Archie and Josh, and we parked up about 20 minutes from St James's Park, walked down this road, and there were black and white shirts everywhere, and every one of them was coming up saying, "Oh, it's great, man, to see Nottingham Forest back in the Premier League." And I couldn't get over it. I expected it to be a bit of a daggers drawn situation, but it wasn't at all. And I remember like walking out of the Etihad. I mean, obviously it's easy for a City fan when you won 6-0, but we were having the crack, and they were saying it's great to see you back. And one guy saying, when it comes right, you've got a good manager and all this. And we've had we've had some good
Frozen.
Yeah, so
yeah.
As I say,
I'm like that. I go and watch, obviously. Well, I didn't this season because I couldn't get a ticket, but I go and watch Leicester at Bournemouth. It's like a home game for me, and I park. My ex-manager, lovely lady, Tracy, lives around the corner from the ground. Literally 5 minutes walk from the ground. Yeah. And she's got an empty front area where you park.
A drive, you mean, Chris?
Drive,
you mean a drive?
That's it. Yes.
I
drive,
thought you might have been alluding to something else there.
Yeah. No.
Careful.
Yeah. She's got a very large drive at the front.
That was my mind. I apologise.
Yeah. Back, we won't go into. But a drive at the front, she's got a large drive. So we're parking in the middle of all the Bournemouth fans. Never felt in danger, never felt like trouble or anything. And I mean, it's how it should be. But no, for me, like I say, it's just I don't think Leicester have. It's down to, like I say, where you are in the county. You could have 3 Leicester fans. I'd say Coventry. Somebody would say Derby. Somebody would say Forest.
Do Leicester need a rival, Chris? Really? Does a team need a rival? Not necessarily.
It's nice. I mean, it's nice. That losing to you in the FA Cup, that really hurt. Losing as holders hurt even more. Thank God it wasn't in the first round, because Arsenal still hold that record. But it did hurt. It did hurt. And it was great. It is great to have a rival, I think, because beating Forest meant more than beating Villa did. We've done that. And we've been kind of clinging on to Villa as our rivals.
Yeah. And as you say, mate, I go back to, we talked earlier when we talked about, Derby's record low points total in the Premier League. And it means something. And I'd seen pretty much all of it. Since I moved back to the Midlands about 5 years ago, I've been to every Derby Forest game. And actually, I've not seen us lose to them yet. We've held the Brian Clough Trophy now for quite a while. There's a thing on Twitter where it says days since Derby beat Forest, and it's something like getting on for like 1,600, 1,700, something in that region, So I've been lucky in that regard. But when we beat them last year in January, this year, calendar year, in January, and we beat them 2-1, the feeling around the City ground is just. Sorry, mate.
You keep freezing.
Do I, mate? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
You seem to freeze to me. I'm all right.
Am I freezing?
A little bit, mate. But I think
maybe a little bit. You're not.
Put your radiator on.
Sorry.
Put your radiator on. It'll warm up a bit, mate.
I can't afford that.
Hey, let me just tell you, Chris. Hey, Chris, let me just tell you, mate. As we go into the deep midwinter, you might see me on this show if we do more of these. You might see me wearing a king-size 13.5 tog duvet because I don't want to put the heating on, mate. So I'll warn you now, all right?
No, well, none of us can afford it. I actually do a thing because everybody was having a dig at us last season about, Leicester, you've won this, you haven't won anything now, you're going down last season and everything. So I had the Daily Arsenal, the Daily Tottenham, and the Daily Manchester United. And it was how long each one had done since they won the league. And obviously, we've done like 5 years,
Yeah.
Tottenham were like 82 years or something, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing a Nottingham Forest one. But I've got to say that just looking here, and this is pretty close, this is almost as exciting as the Eurovision Song Contest, but not quite. But we have played each other 108 times.
Right.
In all competitions.
Okay.
From our first game was on the 9th of February 1901. You were probably there.
I was. Yeah. I bought a burger before I walked into the ground. Yeah,
you won the first 6 games. We lost all 6 of the games, but right up to the 4-0. Just mentioned that again on the 3rd of October. We played each other 108 times in FA, League, and League. The leagues themselves. We have drawn 27.
Right.
How good is your maths?
So you said 108, did you say?
108. We have drawn 27.
Right, hang on. Let me just. I'm going to.
No, paper. No. Okay.
Got me big biro, mate. So.
Forest fans work it out with a pencil. Everybody else uses toilet paper.
Actually, I've been looking after my mum and dad. They're both in their 80s, bless them, and they don't know I nicked this biro off them this morning. That's the kind of son I am, really.
Oh,
a very shocking person I am. But
typical
anyway,
Forest fan. Typical Forest.
So that leaves 81.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Now then, you.
Is it 41?
Sorry.
Is it 41 to one team and 40 to the other?
Well, you have won 40.
42-40?
You have won 40.
And you've won 42?
No.
I think we might be a couple in front, mate. I think it might be just us by a tiny amount.
No, it's not.
Is it not?
We've played 108.
Yeah.
Drawn 27. You've won 40. We've won 41.
Oh!
Champion!
So if you like, going back to October the 3rd, in a historical sense, looking at the Nottingham Forest vintage and the Leicester City vintage, that was a decider.
Yeah. I mean, do not get me. I mean, I am going here off 11 versus 11 on the interweb. So I don't know how accurate they are, but they're pretty. It's not Wikipedia, so I'm pretty much trusting that. But wow, and obviously, had you won 41, I wouldn't have mentioned it at all.
No, it would never have come up for consideration, would it?
It wouldn't. Dave, I was going to do so much. We're going to talk Champions League. We're going to talk England team, but I've just had a great time just talking.
Bless you, mate.
I
have to. I mean, I'm just looking at my watch now, mate, and it's just short of 10:30, and we started at 9 o'clock. Where's that time gone? I mean, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I mean, basically, we're just two blokes sitting here in a living room having a cup of tea, aren't we? Just chatting, shooting the breeze about football. I hope the people who've watched have enjoyed it, mate.
Well, I've called the show "Football Fans the Rivals." At one point, it was going to be called two blokes, 2 pints, and a packet of crisps, or something like that.
I'm teetotal though, mate.
Oh, are you? Well, I'd have had both pints. You could have had the crisps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't say I don't do anything for you.
Bless you, mate.
But Bless you know what? It's great that we can have a bit of banter. We can knock each other's team. It is nice to have you back so we can have this banter, because it wouldn't mean as much, if you do get relegated, we will have to end the show.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? I was just going to say, I might write a little, to continue a theme, I might write a postcard or maybe a folder and send it to Steve and say, look, can you lads please stay in this division? So me and my good mate Chris, the king of pool, we can carry on next year. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, do. And just see if he replies to you. See if he replies to you.
I've got me. Thing is, mate, I've got my pen, I've got my pad. Am I right? Dear Steve and the lads. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Don't include Jesse Lingard. I don't think he'll. I've said a lot about him.
Yeah, I really like him. I do. When we beat Liverpool, he was he got taken off after an hour, but he played well against Liverpool. And then what Forest do, the official people at the City Ground and within the club, a guy called George Harvey, who does wonderful video content for the club. They have a thing called Bench Cam, which was brilliant a couple of seasons ago because Michael Dawson was with us, and Dawson's a great character. And and Benchcam became basically the Michael Dawson show because he was out the dugout helping Sabri Lamouchi and all this. And they brought it back for Liverpool. And Jesse Lingard came off. All he did, he took his boots off, he put his flip-flops on, and then never sat down. He was like a blue-arse fly rummaging around. At the end of the game, he came on the pitch, and there were like some really quite burly stewards stood in front of the Trent end because obviously we were all celebrating and just can't get enough and all that. And Jesse Lingard basically went and hugged all of these stewards, and the looks on these guys' faces was just brilliant, you know. So Jesse needs, the serious business is Jesse needs to do more to make his mark on the club. Otherwise, his stay's going to be quite short, and it might end up being a what might have been. So seriously, Jesse needs to do more. But as a character, you know, I really like it. And I think he enjoys being with us. I think he's definitely part of the banter that goes on. I think he's very. I get the impression he's obviously close to Dean from Manchester United, and I think he gets on well with Brennan and Nico and Morgan. So our younger guys all knock about together, and you've got old Father Time Cookie. He sticks his nose in, and I do think, mate. I mean, surely they don't all get on, but I do think that the vibe that comes off the Forest squad is one of harmony. And two things I will say. One is that I do believe they all go out on a Thursday night, and one of them picks a place to go, and the whole squad go. I don't know whether the girls go with them or whatever, or you know, but they go out. And something I heard, which it may be apocryphal, I may be talking nonsense, but what I heard after the Liverpool game, Steve got them back in the dressing room and said, "Look, lads, well done, fantastic. You're really pleased with you." And I think the coaching staff, Steve said to him, "Right, we'll give you've earned 2 days off." And I don't know whether it was Joe Worrell, who's club captain, or Yatesy, or somebody said, "Actually, Gaffer, we don't want the time off. We want to come back in and train tomorrow and Monday." And I just thought, if that's the attitude of our lads, then I will take that any day of the week. And I tell you what, at the weekend, you got a sense that once they got over this hurt that had been inflicted on them by the nonsensical decision. I mean, to be honest, Chris, Steve Cooper said, and I'm getting all serious again now, forgive me. He said that either all of those penalties get given or none of them. If you're going to give the one that Visser came down, I mean, basically, Dean got the ball first. If you're going to give that one, you've got to give the one on Morgan, the one on Emmanuel Dennis, and the one where Yatesy was basically shoved to the ground. I thought none of them were penalties, frankly. So I have no problem with it, but you need consistency. So, you know, but when Forest battled back at the end, I saw a bunch of lads who were really battling for each other. And I thought Morgan Gibbs-White was absolutely superb, had his best game. I think any neutral watching that game would have been taken. He would have caught their eye.
You know, the way we've been talking, and I was thinking, like, we've hit some lows tonight, and it can't sort of go any lower. Well, I was wrong. Because
there he is. No, man, he's my boss. He's my boss. He is. I have to do what he says. He's checking up on me. He's checking up on me. Bless him.
He'll be whipping you tonight for coming on here.
What he'll do? Is he alluding to me looking young or what? Or I think I'm babysitting you, Chris. It might be the way around, mate.
I know. I'm sorry. Please let me just do this again one more time, just for Mr. Dorr, because I've got to look and just say, where are Nottingham Forest?
I don't know, it's so difficult not to look smug at this point.
Sorry, Mr. Dorr. We will typically comes in just as we're closing. I do want to finish.
Later
I do want to just finish on this one, and you. As always, it's banter, it is rivalry, and like I say, it's nice to have Forest back. We've got some proper proper East Midlands rivals at last. But Ross has asked this. East Midlands' biggest club in order. And remember your bosses in. Out of Forest, Leicester and Derby, Chris and Dave.
Oh.
Now,
Can I go to European Cups?
Nottingham Forest, and I would
Yeah,
probably say
I'm going to go Forest, Leicester, Derby. I mean, if you're doing it right at this minute in terms of league position and standard of squad, Leicester are better than Forest, I think. But I think maybe with history, Leicester have caught up a little bit in recent years with winning the league, which I think was fantastic, winning the cup. But, you know, Forest have got this a real golden age
that's
that
not
all
me
of
blocking him
football
because
knows.
he's saying Leicester on top. You see, for me, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. But yes, we've won the Premier League. Yes, we've won the FA Cup recently. But it's how do you judge who's a bigger club? You know, it's like when they say, Tottenham are a big club. Why? Because you've got a big stadium with a few extra fans in. When did you actually last win something?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of fans, I think it might be Leicester, Derby, Forest, because the capacities of like the King Power and the Pride Park, I think are a bit bigger than the City Ground. The only thing is, come back in about 4 or 5 years, and the City Ground, hopefully, the redevelopment plans look to have gone through now. And the City Ground, I think they're looking to increase the City Ground, and it'll be fantastic when it's done. I think it's going to be about 38,000.
Yeah.
So and actually, Chris, the plans were submitted and then were stymied by COVID. And I think had they started to kind of knock the ground down and we got promoted to the Premier League and the City Ground had been like 3 sides because they're going to knock the Peter Taylor stand down, the main stand, I think that would have been a problem for Forest.
I thought they had knocked it down. It looks like they have.
Well, somebody tried to burn it down, I think, in 1968, but it managed to survive. But it is dilapidated. Yeah, and it does need attention.
We are hoping to expand ours, obviously, soon as well. We finally got planning permission.
Yeah. Where are they going to expand it, Chris? It's going to go upwards.
I think Derby a third.
Yeah.
And if Coventry were included in it, Coventry would be behind Derby as well.
Yeah.
Can I just say it is very, very tight, but you guys have got 2 European Cups to your name.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably just edge it in your favour.
Yeah. Just.
And I'm not going to go any more than that. You just edge it.
Mate, that is more than enough for me, let me tell you.
That's all you get. Hey, thanks very much. I've absolutely loved this.
Me as well, mate.
And met a fellow Tiswas fan in the process.
Who knew? I mean, what other delights, Chris, what other delights are we going to discover on this journey? You never know. I mean,
who knows? Who knows where this may take us?
I'm going to have a cup of tea in a minute and think to myself, what am I doing? I'm in Leicester City land. What's going on here? But I'll tell you what, mate, it's been...
When we start talking at Babe Station, that's when we got to maybe reel it in.
Dave Station. You can have Dave Station, mate. We don't want that. Don't want me seeing me doing that, mate.
I actually love it, though. I love what they've done with it.
Mate, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. And I've really enjoyed just having a crack with you.
Every minute. And we will see you next week at 9 o'clock again.
All being well, mate. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Hey, next week, maybe we'll pick that England squad and we can have a look at the Champions League draws.
Let's not presume.
No, absolutely.
Take care, mate. All the best to you.
And
have a good week.
You.
Cheers. Thank you.
Regards.
Thanks to Dave for coming on there. I've enjoyed that. It was a laugh. It was different. It's nice to, treat, your less well-off cousins, and to give them a bit of exposure. I can say this now, he's in the green room. I'm not sure what you're kind of trying to say there, mate, but But bless them, you got to feel sorry for them. But no, it's been great having Dave on, and we will do it all again next week at 9 o'clock. And like you say, where this is going to take us, who knows? Who knows? We started off with Tis Was. It's all going to be downhill from there on. It can't go any other way. And I am back tomorrow night with the watch along for Newport, Leicester Newport, in the Caribou Cup, where we are going to get revenge on you, young Michael Green. We are going to beat you. You may have beaten us last time, and you've lived off it longer than Forest lived off the FA Cup win. You've been there. It was God knows how long ago it was. I was this high when you did it. Yeah. Now. Do you want a coffee? Is that what you're saying? Wasn't that what? Who was it who used to do that advert? Used to do shake the coffee. I'm sure that's what you mean. I'm going 7:15 tomorrow. I will see you for the watch along. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
That's all, folks.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye and see you next time.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.